I just heard of
Oh, really?
yeah, I heard those first.
Yeah.
So, well, I had to check to make sure that not so I make sure I met Nick I met
Yeah, yeah.
we
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So,
She's different.
yeah, but she able to Chinese. And I know them too. And also, I know it was in 1982. So I had to know them to learn more the chef.
Oh, okay.
I know the chef is a expert in what you and you can talk. I know the night. So I hope that I know that. Ray Chen and yeah. But yeah, so yeah, you can see.
Yeah. So do you think the Vietnamese community is yeah.
But you cannot have two of
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, are those
but it's weird. Maybe this year is but yeah, so but we know the person.
yeah.
I know
Yeah,
yeah, I know all of that, and I present
yeah. Wow.
yeah, so I so this is I think we should only young team they keep one side of the house. She reads a lot of Hispanic. And now she win. Now they're sharing the food practice.
I know Young in but I know Young he and I were in that and he's doing these things down in different conditions, which I really like. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Wow, 40 years. Long time you've been involved.
I've been close to the people.
Wow.
What you want to
yeah, yeah.
We share another community. So let's see. I think the young team now she had to get convention a lot. There's a lot of money to.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah,
close.
yeah. But we share the story. But she can pay a lot. She go to all and she go to the
Yeah.
even now, she invited me next week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even before.
So I guess this is actually 7:30. And I asked my team what they were. I thought it said probably that was 10.
You want to put something?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No. That's what I like, because I was in the back. I'm going right here to the thing, right?
We were comparing notes.
Okay, sounds good. Oh, that's great. Stand up there.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Andrew Murphy. I'm the president of the Asian Democrats of Los Angeles County. I want to invite or welcome all of you, welcome our over 50 people on the live stream right now. So happy that all of you attended either in person or virtually for this truly important event. We're going to go over the logistics in a few moments of the program, but as we get started here, I first wanted to introduce my co-moderator, Nikki Dominguez from Advancing Justice.
Hello, everyone. Are we just excited to get started as I am? Because I just feel the energy tonight. Yes. So hello, everyone. My name is Nikki Dominguez. I am the Policy Director at Asian Americans Advancing Justice SoCal. It is an absolute privilege to be with you all here tonight to have a really important conversation and discussion today. So I'll pass it over to Andrew to get us started.
First, would love to introduce, we're so proud of our 4 co-host organizations. Obviously here we are in the Korean American Federation of Los Angeles. Unfortunately, CAFLA's chairperson is in Korea for an International Korean Federation conference, and so was unable to be here tonight, but we're incredibly grateful for everyone at CAFLA in this space, and we know it's a space of historical importance here. I want to introduce our other co-hosts for their opening remarks. First, the CEO of Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Southern California, Connie Chung-Jo.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Welcome, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for coming tonight. I am Connie Chung-Jo, the CEO of Asian Americans Advancing Justice Southern California, or AJ SoCal. We are the nation's largest legal service and civil rights organization for the Asian American, Native, Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities. So I'd like to start by thanking our host this evening, of course, Korean American Federation of Los Angeles, Asian Democrats of Los Angeles County, and the Korean American Democratic Committee. Tonight, we're here to give you the opportunity to hear from 2 candidates running for Los Angeles County Sheriff. We have with us tonight former Long Beach Chief of Police Robert Luna and LA County Sheriff Alex Villanueva. As we all know, it has been a challenging time for our Asian American communities. The rise in anti-Asian hate incidents has skyrocketed since this global pandemic began, and our community has been scapegoated. Since the beginning of the pandemic, there's been at least 11,000 recorded incidents of hate against our Asian American community, as reported by Stop AAPI Hate. California has had the highest number of those reported hate incidents, with almost 40% of them coming from here in our state. The California Attorney General released a report that said 177% increase in hate crimes against Asians happened in 2021 compared to 2020. And 3 years in a row, California has seen an increase in anti-Asian hate. Many of us don't feel safe anymore doing the regular things that we want to do, like going to the grocery store or taking a walk in the park. We're scared of our parents going out because seniors have been targeted. I was speaking to one Korean American business owner here in Koreatown who said his employees are so scared after someone's been attacked that they have to shuttle their employees at the end of their work shift back and forth. But how do we obtain safety for our Asian American community while also ensuring that we're not overly relying on incarceration and a criminal justice system that we know disproportionately impacts other communities of color, especially the Black and Brown communities. And this obstructs us from really achieving racial equity. These are difficult questions and require thoughtful, careful discussions by law enforcement agencies, community partners, and elected officials all working together. Asian Americans are one of the fastest growing voting blocs in the United States and here in California. Today, we make up 15% of eligible voters. This means we cannot be ignored. Our issues and concerns must be addressed, and our voice matters. So this evening, we have an opportunity to hear directly from the candidates who want to be LA County Sheriff. We'll hear what steps each of them plans to make our community safer in preparation for the November elections. Again, thank you all for being here. And now I'd like to introduce Kenneth An, the Executive Vice President from the Korean American Democratic Committee.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Kenneth An, and I am the Executive Vice President of the Korean American Democratic Committee. And I'm pretty much going to echo a lot of what Connie said. Thank you, Mr. Villanueva and Mr. Luna, for being here. As a Koreatown native, and with the rise of API hate, policing and public safety is our biggest concern here. So I just want to thank you for taking our request to be here seriously. Thank you for showing up, and thank you for hearing our voices. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much to our co-hosts. I'll invite you all if you would like to return your seats here. And I'm super excited to get us going with our two special guests of honor, Sheriff Alex Villanueva and Chief Robert Luna. I'm also excited to co-moderate this forum with Nikki Dominguez, one of the smartest policy directors in all of Southern California from Advancing Justice. So let me briefly share with you the format, and we'll get rolling. We have in the RSVPs, we had over 100 people RSVP for this event tonight. So obviously we have so many on the live stream right now, and many of you here in person. We've collected questions from there. And so we've taken those questions and combined. Many people had similar questions about, especially around anti-Asian hate. And so we have a few of those prepared ahead of time. We'll also take some questions directly from the live stream, as well as take your audience questions as well. Sheriff Villanueva's portion should go until around 8 p.m., perhaps a little bit longer, and then we'll have a brief program break, and then we'll have a similar town hall with Chief Robert Luna. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is begin with giving the sheriff the opportunity to have a brief opening remarks, and then we'll start with Q&A.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and I want to thank you, CAFLA, and the organizer for this event, for the opportunity to speak in front of this audience being live streamed, and the one that will view it later. And first, I want to apologize to everyone here. I want to apologize because this should have been a debate, should have been a person-to-person debate, but my opponent lacked the courage to actually face me, person-to-person like we've done in the past. I've done 7 debates in the primary, and I faced 8 opponents. And I think one-on-one, is something that should be expected of any candidate who wants to challenge for a job as complex and as difficult as the job of sheriff, especially in these trying times. We're facing rise in violent crime. We're facing hate crimes. Hate crimes that impacts everyone. I guarantee everyone in this room knows somebody or has experienced themselves, either a hate incident or a hate crime. And what has the sheriff done about that? We've done an awful lot of things. First, we have the Hate Crime Task Force. We had a hate crime summit just 2 weeks ago at our sheriff's headquarters. We invited members, and we work in partnership with the FBI, with the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the State Attorney General's office, the District Attorney's office, and we invited the Consular Corps from all the different Asian Pacific Islander communities to come to our Hall of Justice to share information on how cases are investigated, how to report hate incidents, and the importance of understanding the difference between an incident and a crime, and the really big importance of reporting hate incidents. Because the people that are involved in those things, racial epithets or, offensive or vulgar signage, anything that offends the community, those are the same people that become the suspects in hate crimes down the road. And that's how we get to connect the dots and bring people to justice. And we did it. The two elderly couple in Roland Heights at the 99-cent market store who were robbed in the Rolex watch, we caught them, all three of them. Now they're facing the criminal justice system. Same thing with the protesters who were peacefully protesting in Diamond Bar, and someone drove through the crosswalk and almost ran them over and then was screaming at them. That person was arrested and is facing consequence. Same thing with the store clerk in Hacienda Heights who was assaulted in the store. That person was arrested. If you remember the rideshare driver in South El Monde who was pistol whipped, he was an elderly API driver. That person was arrested and is facing consequences. But we can only go so far because we have to rely on a district attorney who's going to prosecute cases. And here's a weakness of hate crime in California. There is no state law that makes a hate crime a crime. It's only an enhancement if another crime occurred. And that is a difficulty. Federal law has a standalone hate crime federal law. So it's my turn to call on the state legislature to make a standalone hate crime for the state of California. So it puts a lot of teeth and gives a lot of tools for our local district attorneys and the attorney general to file state charges on standalone hate crimes. That's something that has to be very important because my commitment, I have a zero tolerance for hate crimes and hate incidences, and any assault, anything that victimizes your community, it's victimizing the entire community. We take it seriously. We need action. So now it's time for the legislator to take it as seriously as we are and make hate crime a standalone crime.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And so now we'll begin with the Q&A portion. This question was submitted in some form by multiple people who RSVP'd for this event, and it addresses a bit of what you just mentioned. But we are all in Asian Pacific Islander communities deeply invested in this LA County Sheriff's race due to the ongoing pandemic-related anti-Asian hate and violence. As Connie mentioned earlier, the California Department of Justice reported in June of this year that hate crimes against Asian Americans increased 177% in 2021, which is a 33% increase from the year prior. You talked a little bit already, and so I'll skip this portion of the question. You talked a little bit about what your office has done to respond to this increase, but what specifically can your office do to address anti-Asian hate crimes moving forward?
Well, in addition to what we're already doing, we have a community advisory council. We have the Korean American Sheriff's Association. In fact, Kenny Kim is a proud member of that. That organization has been with us for years as part of the community advisory council. And when we bring the community together, we employ deputies who can speak all the different API languages. In fact, there was a big request, I want to say it was this industry station. They needed a Korean American speaker, and we got someone who spoke Korean at industry station. Big help. And we have people now that speak Mandarin, Tagalog, Korean, Japanese at all the different stations around the San Gabriel Valley where we have the highest concentration of API community members. So that is a big positive moving forward because we can speak. And you dial 911, you can ask for a language and we can get someone on the phone while you're calling 911 with your language and we can get it translated. So the people working dispatch can get the information right out to the deputies working patrol. And this is a challenge I have for the API community. I'm hiring. I need to hire people from your community. Your sons and daughters are going through college right now. I want them to look at law enforcement as a profession, an honorable, noble profession that they can serve their community well. And it's really important to have that representation. And of all of the diversity in the Sheriff's Department, the one that's probably the most challenging to fill is members of the API community.
Thank you for that. So the next question that we have is, well, the local Asian American community wants serious and meaningful action, right, to combat anti-Asian hate crimes. It's also fair for us to acknowledge that we are very deeply skeptical of policing and its ability to protect our communities. So especially given, as you mentioned, language barriers that a lot of our elders and first-generation immigrant communities continue to face. How will you ensure that your measures to combat anti-Asian hate crimes, right, especially including if they include increased policing in our communities, will not harm or threaten the safety of Asian Americans and other communities of color?
Well, I can tell you this, that our actions that we do not threaten any community. Our actions that we take when it involves violent crimes, we are going to arrest people that are harming other people. And I'm sorry, my preoccupation is always victims matter first and foremost. So everything we do is to protect the victim. We want to safeguard the rights of the suspects that we detain when we do arrest, of course. However, our justice system is blind for a reason. You've seen the scale of justice, and the lady's blindfolded with the two scales. She's blindfolded for a reason, because what we do when we're arresting, when we detain someone based on reasonable suspicion, is because of the criminal act that they may be associated with. We're going to find out, are they involved or not? Did a crime occur? And if we have probable cause to make arrests, it's not because of the color of their skin, their gender, their sexual orientation. It's because we have probable cause they actually committed the crime. So the justice system has to be blind. We have to support it. But we can't be denigrating it like politicians love to do and cast aspersions on our criminal justice system when it's working the way it is intended to work. We have to hold everyone accountable to the same rule of law. That's my commitment as sheriff, and that's what we're achieving on the sheriff's department. And there's people, activists, that may not like the results and say, well, it should have been done differently. And I said, well, we have to work with the evidence that's in front of us. We can't work in a pretend world. We wish things were different. We have to focus on what has actually happened. But first and foremost, it's the rights of victims to make sure they're protected. And that's how we safeguard not just the API community, but all communities. Because who are the ones that suffer the most as victims of violent crime? The same communities that we want to protect.
This is another question submitted from an RSVP audience member. Asian Pacific Islanders are America's fastest growing immigrant group, and we know that over 150,000 undocumented Asians live in Los Angeles County. Asian families, especially undocumented Southeast Asian refugee and immigrant families, continue to be traumatized by significant numbers of deportations. Will your office commit to interrupting deportations of undocumented Asians? And if so, how specifically will you do so?
That's a nice question, because I can proudly say we have done absolutely everything possible. I set a national standard. When my first week in office, we removed ICE agents from all of our jails, facilities. And I was the first sheriff in the entire nation. Remember, we run the nation's largest jail system. We literally kicked ICE out of the jail system. Well, we didn't end there. We also found out that the Board of Supervisors, behind our backs, was secretly selling the database of the undocumented to ICE to facilitate their deportation. In fact, they gained $122 million from 2003 to 2018. And they asked me in 2019 as a new sheriff, are you going to renew this? It's called SCAP grant. I said, what is that? I was shocked that they were actually selling out the undocumented, while at the same time in front of the cameras, they were telling everybody that they were the immigrant's best friend. And that hypocrisy, I don't stand for that. So I ended that immediately. I'm never going to do that. And now our policy, the board finally decided to adopt what we'd already did, a permanent moratorium. And they did it after we already enacted the moratorium, right when the pandemic started. But it turns out the Board of Supervisors could have enacted that moratorium back in October of 2017 under the previous sheriff. That's when Senate Bill 54 came into effect. They didn't do anything about it. So the deportations were continuing. In fact, we were deporting more people than Joe Arpaio was in Arizona. The LA County Sheriff's Department, with a full authorization and knowledge of the Board of Supervisors. I stopped all that. But we have to remember, federal immigration has a proper role to play. We have to have a secure border. We have to enforce immigration law. But it cannot happen intermixed with local law enforcement, because then people, just like you said, they're not going to trust calling 911 because it might lead to a deportation. We don't want that at all. So I've achieved that fine balance where there's totally separate. Federal immigration does their job on one side, we do our job on the other side, and we don't mix the two forever. But we acknowledge that both have to be done. And that is how we are improving our relations with the undocumented community, because not just on the API side, 150,000, there's 1 million undocumented residents in LA County. My opponent on the other side was actually sharing from a automatic license plate readers. He was sharing the information with ICE. And he did it willingly. He was told to stop and repeated it again. Then he said, my secretary hit the wrong button or some nonsense like that. No. everything I've done, I've actually modeled a behavior now that the rest of the nation, we've established that standard, the best practice, and it's working.
Thank you for that. So the next question that we have is from the audience as well, and they are asking and wondering, what will you do to root out sheriff gangs, extremist groups, and white supremacy from within the sheriff's department?
Well, first and foremost, the sheriff gang issue has become a political campaign. It's like claiming there's unicorns running around, which is great. We can outlaw unicorns, but until you drag a four-legged critter with a horn on the head, call me impressed. When I took over the department, my first day in office, I heard there was this incident at Kennedy Hall in East LA. There were allegations the deputies were fighting, a drunk fight, and all this stuff. My first day in office, I removed the station captain of his command. I replaced the entire leadership team. I ended up doing an extensive criminal investigation and administrative investigation. We fired 4 deputies. We suspended without pay 22 deputies. We transferred 36 deputies. I created a policy that bans the formation and participation in any group that harms other people. Remember, there has to be misconduct associated. Very important, because of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution that forbids us from banning a group. There has to be some misconduct involved. We enforcing that policy. I didn't end there. I sponsored Assembly Bill 958 with Assemblyman Mike Gibson. Our department policy, which was enacted in 2020, became the model of which state law is now official policy. It was signed into law by the governor. That is a commitment. And then every single employee of the department had to sign an attestation form. They saw a 4-minute video that I produced where I'm telling them this is what your expectations are. It's a part of their permanent record, every single employee of the department. There is nothing else legally I can do on the issue. It becomes a political potato, a campaign, and there's some racist undertones on that whole issue because the department is now majority minority, as in the past. So if someone has evidence of someone who's is a gang member, is doing something, please bring it to our attention. I'll be more than happy to fire them. I have yet to have anybody step forward with any information on that. And that includes the Board of Supervisors, the Inspector General, the Oversight Commission. And he keeps saying, I'm going to name names. I said, great, name them, put them on paper. Put your reputation on the line and say who is a gang member. I'll be more than happy to terminate them if the facts support it. But they never have. Why? Because they know it doesn't exist.
Great. At this point, we want to turn over to some in-person audience questions. We'll also have an opportunity for some live stream questions as well. Just want to remind everyone, this event, we really appreciate all of our co-hosts. This is a nonpartisan event, and so keep that in mind when you're asking your questions. And obviously, the purpose of this event is to have a really nuanced conversation. And so we look forward to your questions that help support the purposes of this event, especially as it regards issues important to the Asian Pacific Islander community. So with that being said, are there any questions in the audience? Right in the middle, and here I'll walk over and pass the mic so we can hear your question.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Shekinah. I work with Filipino Worker Center, and a lot of our work is just supporting the immigrant community in Los Angeles. I know you mentioned ending the relationship with ICE, but I know that ICE also has contractors that still, stand outside of LA County jails. And a lot of times they use information that comes from county jails as well. And a lot of these contractors are also paid thousands, if not millions, by the county as well. So is there anything you can do? Yeah, it's true. So is there anything you can do as sheriff to, not only end the relationship with ICE as an entity, but ICE's contractors, and stop them from using county data to continue the deportation pipeline?
Well, the data that ICE may be using is the same data that's available to everybody. And we have a public data system for inmates. We can't control who sees that information because that's something that we facilitate for the entire community. So on that regard, on the regard of them actually being on the facilities, they're not there. And if it is, in fact, now I'm going to find out if that is such a case itself.
Yeah, there have been a few people who have reported it within the community.
Okay, but I need a little bit more than that, but we're going to take a look at it. We have patrols around the jail, you know, and we're going to ask them if they've seen anything that looks like someone who's trying to detain people and they're not in a marked black and white, like say LAPD or sheriffs. Okay, so who are these people? We'll find out. And thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'm going to find out further. But on the other part is public records. We can't control who sees a public record.
Any other questions, live questions? Yes. Do you mind passing it down?
Thank you so much for coming tonight, Sheriff A Villanueva. So my name is Leslie. My family's business has been in Long Beach for 40 years and burned down during the LA riots and was broken into during the 2020 Floyd protest. I was actually was down there in Long Beach when these protests happened. Many of us in this room, Korean, Black, and otherwise, have experienced so much pain and suffering due to civil unrest. But I also want folks in this room to know that a Korean man by the name of Hong Kyo Lee in 1988 was killed by sheriff's deputy after a car chase. He was cornered in an alley and 5 deputies shot 15 rounds to the car. Very much like those folks who are Black are experiencing in this country. In my personal opinion, I believe that it is the jobs of police officers to bring folks who break the law to court to face the criminal justice system. My mom was asking me why we are having the same conversations about what happened to Rodney King 30 years later. And I had that same question too. I want to know why you think so many officer-related violence and killings happen and what you plan on doing to make sure that we don't repeat history with what happened to Rodney King, George Floyd, Andres Guardado, Hong Kyo Lee, and many, many others, including our communities, so that they feel safe under your leadership. Thank you.
Well, that's we kind of got two different things going here. Let me start the first part where you prefaced it, the fact that you had your business burned down in Long Beach in 2020. And I'm sad to say that there was two cities in particular that had that same fate, businesses, and that was the city of Santa Monica and Long Beach. And both cities shared something in common. The chief of police had failed to do their job. In the case of Long Beach, that was Robert Luna. And his own officers were complaining why they were not allowed to stop the looting, stop the burning. And they were literally foaming at the mouth saying, let's go get them, let's take care of business. And the chief, from the safe comfort of whatever bunker he was hiding in the fire station, said, no, we're not going to do that. That was a bad mistake. I ended up going to Long Beach myself, and I was chasing looters in the alleys with my deputies and with Long Beach police officers that were happy to see us there, and we assisted them. So that was a failure of leadership there, and I'm really sorry that your business suffered. I've spoken to many business owners of Long Beach who suffered the same fate. So with that, the rest of the county did not suffer that type of looting or the damage. Why? Because we actually took an active role in protecting all of our businesses, all of our communities. So we did not see that. It was restricted just to that place in particular, in Santa Monica. Now I'll tell you this, regarding Rodney King, George Floyd, and you talk about police violence in general, we've done everything legally possible. We hold people accountable to a higher standard than before. When I took office after the George Floyd murder, there was a campaign, 8 Can't Wait. And we reviewed all of our policies to see how they matched up with 8 Can't Wait. They were all there, the principles, they weren't clearly defined. We made them very clearly defined. Every deputy has a duty to intervene if someone else is using excessive force. They have a duty to report misconduct of other deputies. They have a duty to cooperate when we do an investigation. We have a duty to protect a whistleblower from retaliation. All these things now are specific standalone policies, and we're enforcing them. When it comes to, for example, the deputy-involved shooting of Ryan Twyman, we had to change policy there as well. And now we have administrative investigations that are working concurrently, criminal ones, and we ended up terminating one of the deputies involved in the death of Ryan Twyman. The other one suspended for long-term suspension without pay. We are holding our personnel accountable. Just this week, I signed off on 2 more 2 more terminations of deputies who were involved in excessive force cases and misconduct. So we are holding people accountable. I cannot prosecute people. That decision rests in the hands of the district attorney. Our complaint with the DA, and it goes back quite a while, is it takes forever. It takes us 6 to 8 months to present a deputy involved shooting case to the district attorney. It's treated like every single homicide. They go through very extensive investigation, witnesses, canvassing, evidence gathering, forensics, the autopsy report, toxicology. I mean, it's a very comprehensive thing that's given to the DA. Then they sit on it for years, and we're left in the limbo. What do we do with the employee? Did they act properly, legally, or was it an unlawful shooting? The DA decided to prosecute Deputy Luke Liu recently, and he was found not guilty. So, you know, sometimes the case is presented and there's a prosecution. Doesn't mean that's a conviction, but at least the system is now working. We're holding people accountable. Where in the past, people would be involved in excessive force and they would keep their job. They're not keeping their job anymore. That is a big change, this big reform. But there's a perception in some crowd that the actual use of force happens everywhere. When you think of it, we make 2.5 million contacts a year. We arrest on average 100,000 people per year. And we start narrowing it down, how many involve use of force, how many involve use of deadly force, and what was the person doing at the time the deputies tried to make an arrest? Were they trying to kill someone else? Were they armed? Was there a struggle? All these things factor into it. So when you go down to what's actually happening on the ground, we are holding people accountable to the rule of law. That is my expectation of every single employee of the department. And I can say it is working. In the past, you never would have heard of deputies being terminated for excessive force. Now it is happening. But it doesn't happen that often because it's not a frequent event. It's a very rare event. We have to keep it in perspective. Because one of the mistakes is tragic, unlawful, for example, homicide or murder like George Floyd, and everybody pieces 2 or 3 of these events in the entire nation, all of a sudden, every deputy or every peace officer is a suspect. No, there's about 19,000 police agencies in the United States. There's roughly 900,000 law enforcement officers, the federal, state, county, city level, and tribal. So you got to keep them in perspective when we start throwing out numbers or, oh, there's, increases and like that. No, let's actually quantify it. I think we're on the right path, but we need information. We have body-worn cameras now, which has been a huge help. It's allowed us to reduce citizen complaints by 31%, lawsuits from the public by 17%, because body-worn cameras allows us another tool to hold people accountable. So things are working. They're not perfect, but we're definitely in the right direction.
Okay, I believe we're quick follow-up.
Thank you for your answer. I heard the first half of your answer, which was blaming the cities for what happened. And thank you for the information, but I was more asking what it is that you were going to do. Well, you described in your second half, you described that you're doing the function of governance, which was to hold people accountable. And that is what the department's supposed to do at the time. But what, as you, in your new role as sheriff again, will be doing to do new policies that actually, challenge policing so that these kinds of killings just don't happen at the hands of officers?
Well, the policies we put into place, the reform measures I put into place are groundbreaking. They're new for the department. And the training that goes along with it, it costs us $7 million to do 1 day of training for the entire department, sworn peace officers, $7 million. So when you're defunded, like we have been by the Board of Supervisors, you can see it's very difficult to do training because we have barely enough people to put out there in patrol to answer 911 calls, to then take them out of the field, to put them in a training class where, okay, who's going to answer the 911 call? Who's going to go out there and save somebody? That is a big challenge that I faced my entire time in office. And that's brought on by the Board of Supervisors. Unfortunately, it's ideologically driven and it's harming everyone's public safety. And it's harming our capacity to reduce violence on the streets, for example. When it comes to the conduct of deputies, we're seeing improvements. We're seeing major improvements. especially because of the body-worn cameras. We're introducing it now into the county jails on a pilot project. This is leading in the nation, especially when consider we have the nation's largest jail system. So policies are working. They have to take effect. We have to examine them, do an evaluation of them. Is there anything that needs to be tweaked? And that's when we interact with our community partners, with stakeholders. They bring things to our attention. Again, that's this back and forth between the department and the community. Because every single member of the community, you're shareholders and stakeholders of the sheriff's department. It is literally your department. It's not us and you, it's we together.
Okay, we have about 10 more minutes for this portion of the program. So we're going to do a couple more audience questions, and then I want to make sure we get questions in from the live stream as well. So are there any audience? Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking out about the importance of responding to anti-hate incidents and crimes. As we know, anti-Chinese rhetoric, like calling the coronavirus China virus or Kung flu, instigates further violence against Chinese and the larger Asian American community. So given this, what do you say to the criticism that you have used anti-Chinese rhetoric in falsely accusing a coronavirus testing company called Fulgent of having ties with the Chinese government, perhaps because it is owned by a Chinese American?
Thank you for that question. And I will tell you this, the information we provide regarding Fulgent came from the federal government, from the FBI. And the fact that the Board of Supervisors, County Council chose to misrepresent it and deceive our employees, county employees, well, shame on them for that. We actually presented the information that was given us by the FBI. They're the source of all the information. And the fact that Fulgent entered into a sole source contract with the Board of Supervisors, where every single employee did not have the option to opt out of data sharing with Fulgent, is a major problem. Why? Because I actually experienced it myself. My staff was trying to enter my information on the Fulgent before we knew about all the drama. And the box where you could check off where you do want your information shared was disabled. And then Fulgent Company actually had their policy on their website that they share their information with foreign governments. It's their own information. But once we brought it to everyone's attention, it became a big public. That website was cleared of that information. So what you're saying doesn't really support the facts on the ground. But I will tell you this. Mr. Luna was supposed to be here with me. But on September 22nd, I believe, he sent an email saying he was afraid for his security to come to this event because of COVID. However, after that, he had no problem going visiting white businessmen in the Valley or going to East Los Tacos in East LA with the Latino community with no mask on in a crowd just like this. So I think there's a difference between Mr. Luna and myself, and that conduct right there is illustrative of that.
Okay, so we're going to be taking our last question from the live audience, and then we're going to be moving to questions from our virtual audience.
Sheriff, as reported by the LA Times, a former commander in your administration has accused you of covering up an incident where a deputy knelt on the neck of one of the inmates in the jail. You said that you learned of the incident months later, but the commander said in a lawsuit that you saw the video of the incident days after it happened. What did you know, and when did you know it?
That's very simple. And I have not changed what I said. I said it back then. We learned of this information, I believe, in November of that year. I think the incident happened in March, and there was a cover-up. Unfortunately, the person suing was the one who engineered the cover-up. So when I got the information in November, I took the action that I should have never had to have taken. Because remember, I'm at the top of the organization. When there's a level 2 use of force like that case, it never comes to my attention unless it's something newsworthy. And that's way after the decisions have been made in terms of doing an administrative investigation, a criminal investigation, relieving the involved employee of duty, for example. The only thing that happened was an administrative investigation that wasn't really progressing the way it should have normally. When that incident happened, I believe it was in March. I can't remember the date. I think the 10th of March, somewhere around there. I was in Virginia. In fact, I was in Quantico, Virginia with the FBI going through a week-long training session. That day that it happened, the person who was suing made the decision to bifurcate the investigation into two. That person who was suing made that decision. There was only one reason to make that decision, is to initiate a cover-up. What their motive was, they thought maybe they were going to protect me. They were not protecting me by doing a cover-up. When the cover-up was uncovered is when it was brought to my attention through our normal process that we have checks and balances built into the system. And our chief, Kelly Porowski of our internal professional standards division, it finally got to her attention, and she brought it immediately to the undersheriff. Undersheriff brought it to my staff. They brought it to my attention to say, what on earth is going on here? And why wasn't this person relieved of duty back in March? Why wasn't a criminal investigation initiated? Then all of a sudden, everything happened. And not the criminal investigation on the inmate involved in assaulting the deputy, the criminal investigation on the potential of the deputy be involved in the crime of excessive force on the inmate. So when I was made aware of it, I took all the appropriate action. And the problem is that this person who engaged in the cover-up picked the wrong incident to try to frame a cover-up, because everyone, all the digital footprint, everything indicates it happened on November and after November when all the positive steps were taken. So remember, she can put anything she wants on a lawsuit, but now she has to testify under oath about what she said, and she has no evidence to support her case. Nothing at all. It is what it is, and unfortunately, that's some people make bad choices in their careers. That is one right there.
Great. So I think we're going to move on to our virtual questions. And again, these are from folks that RSVP or are currently joining us virtually through our streaming. And so the first one that I have here is, what is your stance on Measure A, and how do we keep the actions of sheriff's departments accountable?
Well, it's very simple. The actions of sheriffs are already accountable as they are. In fact, the Board of Supervisors, who holds the supervisors accountable? Just the voters. And either by an election, running for re-election, vote them out of office, or go through the pain of a recall. We have, and then there's also, if they commit a crime, the DA or a prosecution can convene a criminal grand jury. They can do an indictment, and that's one way they can be removed from office. The same pathway, I'm also eligible for that same treatment. So is the district attorney. But the sheriff and the district attorney have an additional pathway of oversight, and that's the state attorney general. So Measure A totally ignores and deceives the voters into believing that there's no other way. So we have to give it to the supervisors. That is corruption at its core right there, because the attorney general has the authority to supervise all sheriffs and all district attorneys, all 58 of them, every single county. And I heard all the argument when the board was debating this motion. They never even mentioned the attorney general's role in this. Shame on the board. That is corruption at its finest, because what they're trying to tell the voters is, yes, vote to take away your vote to decide who the sheriff is going to be and give it to the Board of Supervisors. And now we know who some of those supervisors are under criminal investigation. Look at Mark Ridley Thomas, indicted, 20-count federal indictment. He was the brainchild behind Measure A to begin with. Why do you think they want that on the ballot? Because they do not want an independent and honest sheriff that could hold them accountable when they break the law.
I believe this will be our final question. So this is also from the live stream audience. How can we address lewd conduct, harassment, sexual harassment, and other gender-based violence that can potentially escalate, violence against civilians that can escalate if it remains unaddressed? And I'd like to add to this question, especially how can we ensure the protection of LGBTQ plus individuals, especially trans individuals here in Los Angeles?
Well, one thing I can do is, this is something I campaign promise I accomplished back in 4 years ago. And meeting with members of the LGBTQ community, they had a concern about sex workers and about the enforcement of prostitution laws, and the fact that they were using the possession of condoms as evidence towards solicitation of prostitution. There are things like that. And it was like they're putting these people kind of between a rock and a hard place, because they want to protect themselves by whatever. No one volunteers to that line of work, you know, by economic necessity, hardship, or whatever the case is. But we were depriving them of the means to protect themselves to enforce misdemeanor crimes. So I made a direction for our personnel. We are not going to use condoms or the presence or absence of condoms as a means for that. That is literally protecting the LGBTQ community. And because that issue is unique, and that was out of West Hollywood area that came to light. One example. Another one, I promoted the very first LGBTQ assistant sheriff ever. Her name is Holly Francisco. She is the number 3 ranking person on the department. So we have ample representation throughout the ranks from the LGBTQ community. We have an LGBTQ chapter of our community advisory council. So we're constantly getting information from them. We just prepared our, in fact, Melissa, our sign language interpreter, she prepared a pamphlet, multicolored pamphlet that has all the information about the LGBTQ community, symbols, colors, the meanings behind everything, the language, all the terminology. And you read it, it's like, wow, this is really pretty good put together. And it's something that we've mass producing, and we're handing it out in all our patrol stations. And it's something that we're doing, reaching out to the community because we want to learn, we want to understand. I'm not LGBTQ myself, but I can consider myself an ally of that.
Sheriff, we know that you have another event to get to, so in the interest of time, I think we'll wrap up here. But if you would like to make any closing remarks before we wrap this portion of the event.
One, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for all the good questions from everyone from here, the office, live streaming. Important questions. The biggest question of all, though, is where do you want the future law enforcement in LA County to be? Do you want it on someone who's going to be working for the Board of Supervisors and supporting the defunding of the Sheriff's Department and shrinking our operation throughout the county that keeps everyone alive and safe? Do you want to support someone who endorses closing Men's Central Jail without a replacement and pushing 4,300 dangerous individuals out into the community with no relief at all, no safeguards? That is what we're looking at with my opponent. He has had the opportunity since the beginning of this campaign to say what his plan is, what he's going to do. He'll read off a list of priorities, and yeah, everyone has priorities, but what's your plan? When I ran 4 years ago, I talked about getting ICE out of the jails. I talked about the body-worn cameras. I talked about diversifying the workforce. I talked about inclusive policies that allowed everyone to participate in the promotional system, and I implemented them, and they worked. That is policy moving forward. My policies for next term in office, Lord willing, I'm granted that by you, the voters. We're going to get our workforce back up to the 18,300 mark that we need. We want to tear down Men's Central Jail, replace with a mental health treatment center. That has to happen. We want to create station-based community advisory councils that meet on a monthly basis with the leadership of the station. And I'm going to pop in all these as much as I can. I've done 104 town halls throughout the entire county in 4 years. And I've worn the roads everywhere, and I've listened to everybody. And in every single city in the county, I've been there at least once, talking to the community directly, no filters, no scripts, no hiding behind plexiglass, or I'm not going to deal with the media. I've taken on the media straight on. And that is my commitment in the second term. We have big issues. It's going to be public corruption. Why is public corruption important? Because it robs us of the resources to combat homelessness and violent crime. Yes, those 3 things have to be addressed in my second term in office. That is my focus, and the department is raring to go to make that happen. And I just thank you for the opportunity and wish everyone to stay safe out there. And any questions, please don't hesitate to call me.
All right. We're going to take a brief program break before Chief Luna comes on. But Sheriff Villanueva, thank you again for joining us today. We appreciate you coming out.
Thank you so much.
Hello.
I don't know. I will. So you can, you're good at selfie. Not very good. Thank you.
I saw you sending that to me. She related to coaching.
My parents named me after her. So yeah, I know.
So that when I see you, we can see.
That was fucked up shit. All right, I'll take it this way. One, two, three. Oh, I just was there. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. There you go.
I love to have the whole stuff again. So we had that here.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really unique. Yeah, very Hi, how about yourself? Hi, Mark. Yes, you have. I Oh, yeah.
I'm ready for this transition. Yeah, well, I just.
Oh, I learned. Happy to teach communication side. Supervise someone in the field office.
You literally walked in. Shut up. No. I can't come my yeah. I mean, I never really met all personalities. I didn't go up there.
Quick. Oh. How about I turn this mic on? Just a quick announcement is we're going to get rolling with the second portion of our program at 8:15. So in about 4 minutes, we're going to get started at 8:15 in about 4 minutes.
Dude, where's Justin? Where's Justin? Every day, I was like Saturday.
What do you think those are? What are you talking about?
Yeah, we
Okay, if everyone could please take your seats, we're going to get rolling with the second portion of our program. If everyone could please take your seats, we're going to get rolling with the second portion of the program.
I think you're going to have to be louder. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, the second portion of our program tonight will be commencing in 1 minute. Please have a seat. We're going to get started in 1 minute. Thank you very much.
That was good.
It's time for Dodger endorsement.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Let's make sure they can hear us in blue heaven, folks.
Thank you, sir.
You're actually here. I'll get started on this end. Okay. Thank you all very much. Want to again appreciate all of the audience questions and the audience interaction, as well as the live stream. It was shared with us that we had over 100 people on the live stream tonight, so really exciting turnout. Yeah, absolutely, as well as this great in-person audience. Chief Luna, give you the chance for opening remarks here in a second, but first I wanted to say that on behalf of, you missed the, or we had the introductions of the co-hosts at the beginning of this event during the first portion. And on behalf of Asian Americans Advancing Justice Southern California, the Korean American Democratic Committee, the Korean American Federation of Los Angeles, our wonderful hosts here, and the Asian Democrats of Los Angeles County, we truly appreciate both Sheriff Villanueva as well as Chief Luna. We appreciate you coming for this nuanced discussion on policing and anti-Asian hate. And especially, I want to again reiterate, this is a nonpartisan event. It's a community forum, and we are really here to ensure that the community can have a very healthy discussion in this hotly contested race about issues that affect Asian Pacific Islanders. So with that framing, Chief Luna, I'd like to turn it over to you for opening remarks. Thank you very much for being here.
Well, thank you. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much. I know it takes so much work to put something like this together. And then to our partners in the media, thank you for covering what I believe is a very important issue, a very important relationship between our Asian Pacific Islander community and law enforcement. So just a little bit about me. I am running to be the LA County Sheriff because I really care. I want to make a difference. And I just believe we need change right now. Now, for me, you're looking at a man who wanted to be a police officer from a very early age. I estimate first or second grade when I first saw a sheriff's deputy in the first grade, may have been the second grade, but I saw him in the classroom and it was like a Batman and Robin moment for me. It's like, that's what I want to do. It inspired me. I was the oldest of three kids. My father migrated here from Sinaloa, Mexico. My mother, born in Modesto, but to a immigrant farm family. I didn't learn English until I went to school. So when I tell you I wanted to be a police officer, it wasn't exactly a very simple journey. My family, even though they had respect for the police, didn't really like the police. So my journey took me to the city of Long Beach, where I spent 36 years of my life serving the city. I moved around different places in the department, like gangs, narcotics, homicide. So I have a lot of experience doing street police work. But at one point I started to promote. I promoted through every rank at the Long Beach Police Department, and actually spent 20 years of those 36 years in executive management. And in 2014, I was appointed as a chief of police. I was very successful there. Some of my successes in Long Beach during my 7-year tenure, I reduced violent crime by 6.5%, reduced property crime by 10%. And if anyone tells you you can't reduce crime and uplift police accountability, they're wrong. They can come and see me. We can talk about how we did it in Long Beach. So at the same time we were reducing crime, we also increased police accountability. We reduced our officer-involved shootings by 33%. Our uses of force by 29%, and our citizen complaints by 30%. And so my vision for the Sheriff's Department is simple. I want to have a 21st century Sheriff's Department, one that is forward thinking, open to change, and wants to work with our community in partnership, in collaboration with other government officials to handle or tackle some of the most complex challenges that we face in our community, such as crime, such as dealing with the unhoused, and anything else that may come up. I have a multitude of endorsements already. The Los Angeles County Democratic Party endorsed me by 80%. The LA County Federation of Labor, the LA County Federation of Business, all 5 LA County supervisors have endorsed me because they know I have the capabilities of working with them. And I also want to comment amongst many other endorsements that I have the endorsement of the Korean American Democratic Committee, Congress members Judy Chu and Ted Lieu, and LA Council member John Lee as well. So with that, I am really looking forward to engaging you with the questions, and let's do it.
I love that attitude. So let's get started, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So the first question that we have, and again, these are from our audience, people that are RSVP'd, was the co-hosts of these events, right, and all of the community members are deeply invested in LA County Sheriff race because of the rise of anti-Asian hate crimes. We've seen that the California Department of Justice reported just this June that hate crimes against Asian Americans have increased by 177% in 2021, a 33% increase from the year prior. So the question is, what specifically do you think your office can do to decrease anti-Asian hate crimes?
First of all, that number is absolutely outrageous. Any percentage increase is something that we have to address and have to address very seriously. So I'm going to tell you something that for any of us in our community to sit back and think that you are being attacked because of your culture, your race, it just actually sickens me. So you will have the full cooperation of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, just like we did in Long Beach. And what we made sure that we did, and I plan on doing the same as the sheriff, is to make sure, one, that we are communicating, that we are engaging you in conversation, that we make sure that that listening portion of things is where are the challenges? Are people in our community actually coming out and reporting the crime when it's occurring? Is there a public trust issue? And there may be in most communities of colors like ours, people don't want to just come out and talk about these things. So how do we do that? How do we educate people? How do we share or think out of the box? That's important. To have special functions, not only with the police, but people outside the police department, whether they're government agencies or private entities, just to show a solidarity that we are culturally competent and very concerned about this issue. But on the sheriff's side or the police department side of it, we have to make sure that our employees are aware of the sensitivity of the significance of these crimes and the impacts they have on our community. And that's done by training at the academy or advanced deputy or officer training. And I'm hoping to partner with many of you to come and teach us, to come and share with us stories, maybe bringing in parents and grandparents about how the difficulties in some of our immigrant communities. Those things teach, educate, and then you have a new sensitivity to doing things. The other things we're going to do is make sure that we're responding to the best of our ability, that we're investigating to the best of our ability, and full collaboration with, like, for example, the district attorney's office. If we have an Asian hate crime, we have to make sure that we send a very strong message that there will be enhancements for somebody who commits these kind of crimes, and then show the world that this is what's going to happen if you choose to do these kind of things. And by the way, what I'm describing to you takes an extensive partnership with people like the DA or the FBI or state DOJ, who all have response teams to deal with these very serious issues.
Chief Luna, this is another audience submitted question. While the local Asian community wants serious and meaningful action to combat anti-Asian hate crimes, it's fair to say that we are also deeply skeptical of policing and its ability to protect our communities. In March of 2019, there was a reported that a jury awarded $9 million to the family of Sinuan Priam, which I apologize to them, their family, or to their family if I mispronounce that name, a mentally ill Cambodian woman shot in the back by Long Beach police officers. At the time, the largest payout in a police shooting case in Long Beach history. How will you ensure that your measures to combat anti-Asian hate, especially if they include increased policing, will not inadvertently threaten the safety of Asian Americans?
To listen to our community, just like I fundamentally started to talk about. Anytime you have any incident like what was just described, the first thing you have to do as a police agency is take full accountability for what happens. And one thing that we did in Long Beach is when this occurred is working with our city attorney's office, finding out what was it exactly that happened in that courtroom, the jury deliberations, and then bringing it back so then we can learn step by step. Do we need to modify our policy? Do we need to modify our training and all of our accountability factors? Because whether it's any lawsuit for any amount of money, a life was lost. a family was impacted. And we have to have sensitivity to that, because the goal is never to allow that to occur again. So for me, if I just translate that really quick, we need a sheriff who actually can look at each and every one of you and take responsibility and accountability for the actions of their employees. And I was able to do that as a police chief in Long Beach.
Thank you. So the next question that we have is, Asian and Pacific Islanders are America's fastest growing immigrant group. And we now know that over 150,000 undocumented Asian Pacific Islanders lived in Los Angeles County. Long Beach specifically is home to the largest resettlement of Cambodians who have fled genocide. However, Long Beach has garnished a bad reputation for deportation and ICE collaboration for by local Asian American groups, such as the Long Beach South Asian Anti-Deportation Collective, have formed specifically to address the long number of Long Beach deportations. As the sheriff, will you continue the same policies and ICE collaboration of Long Beach, or if you want to reverse your course, how will you ensure the safety and protection of undocumented Asian refugees and immigrant families?
That's an interesting question, because I don't know if I agree with whoever wrote that question. Just a little bit about my background. I think I started off talking about my father being an immigrant. And I think I told you that my mother lived in Modesto. My mother had told me stories about when she was working at one point in a chicken factory, where people would call ICE on the Latino folks who worked in the chicken factory, and she was detained, handcuffed and detained by, it wasn't ICE back then, it was INS. And even decades later, when she described the embarrassment, the fear, she was shaking. It had such an impact on her. I heard countless stories in my family, Latino families, of what you just described. So for me, as a government official, I wasn't aware of one deportation that the Long Beach Police Department was involved in. And it's interesting, there was one incident where an analyst right-clicked a mouse and allowed federal agencies to access some information, but it was dozens of federal agencies. We identified the mistake, admitted to it, cleared it up so it would never happen again. But our policy at the Long Beach Police Department will be the same one we have as the sheriff, that we will not work with ICE in any civil immigration enforcement. That is not our job. We need public trust. Public trust is a priority in order for us to move together, and that will be a priority.
Chief Leno, we have one more audience submitted question, and then we'll probably move into live Q&A with the audience here. This question from an audience member: what will you do to root out sheriff gangs, extremist groups, and white supremacy within the sheriff's department?
The fact that we're talking about sheriff gangs or gangs and police in the same sentence is, to me, completely not acceptable. That is not why we as police officers or sheriff deputies took the oath. And I want to start off by saying there's a lot of good men and women at the LA County Sheriff's Department. But here's the thing. If you are in charge of the Sheriff's Department and it is well documented that there are challenges with gangs, you have to accept that they exist. That's the only way. It's like any other problem in the world. You cannot start fixing a problem until you acknowledge their existence. Once you acknowledge their existence, you make sure that everybody knows internally and externally that they are 100% unacceptable. And then what you start doing is you make sure that there's a good policy. And a policy isn't worth the paper it's written on unless you're enforcing it and you're holding people accountable. Not only the individuals that are involved in this misconduct, but their supervisors who may be looking the other way. Other than that, the other thing we have to do is allow federal and state intervention. That means the FBI, state and federal DOJ need to come in and immediately be allowed to look at any and all information that we have, open every drawer, pull back every curtain, and if we have nothing to hide, show them everything we got. I also believe that you have to cooperate with civilian oversight. There is no ifs and buts about that. If civilian oversight is going to subpoena me, then you know what? I'm not only going to be there, I'm going to be there early. You have to cooperate. That's the message we send. The other factor that's involved, in my opinion, is mental health care of our community is very, very important to me. It always has been. It's going to be as the sheriff. But I also believe that there's a significant challenge with mental health care for our employees, the lack thereof. So to me, it's going to be a priority because I believe a lot of the misconduct that we're seeing is untreated PTSD. We have to deal with it. We have to be courageous and accept it. And I think that will help us not only better recruit employees, but also retain them as well.
Great, thank you so much. At this point, we're gonna open for questions for the audience. Again, we're gonna do audience here first, and then we're gonna move it to our virtual audience. So we have a question up here.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Vo. I'm from Vietnamese American. I like what you say about mental health. I'm the doctor, so that's very important for mental health, not only for people, but for department. The issue I want to say is recently we had a lot of robbery and burglary in Vietnamese and Thai Buddhist temple. They came and get a lot of money. So I just want to see you can help, by provide more patrolling around the temple. And whenever we have event, can you send some, deputy sheriff there to protect us? Because we lost a lot of money and they came and they, threatening the monk and the nun. So it happened in Pomona, in the Long Beach area, and Thai temple. Thank you.
Yes. To put it simply, we have to do whatever we can to work together, to partner. My philosophy on community policing, or what I call relationship-based policing, is continuously communicating with our specific communities. So if we're having, the trajectory of crime is going up and it's unacceptable, how are we going to address it? We have to be very strategic on crime. We cannot have this mentality where I get up in front of all of you, including the media, and I try to scare you into making poor decisions or going backwards with things like criminal justice reform, with a lot of the advances that we've made. We have to figure out a way to be data-driven with the information we have, make sure we're sharing this with our community. So at the end of the day, my job is to make each and every one of you feel safe and your family safe, whether it's at your home, your business, your place of worship, whatever that is. So again, it's communication, addressing it. If we have to put more patrols out there, then that's what we have to do. But we have to consistently engage you to be partners in the problem-solving aspect of this.
Great, and I saw a hand back here.
Thank you for being here. My name is Kenneth, and my question for you is, Sheriff Villanueva said that you are working with the Board of Supervisors to continue to defund the police, and for him, it's impeding his work to provide public safety and community policing. So is that true, and is that a problem for you? Like, are you able to work with less funds for the police force?
I am not for defunding the police. You can look at my track record, my body of work through my law enforcement career, and you will see that I've always worked with our elected officials in our community to provide the best service possible. We need a sheriff that can collaborate and work with our government officials. I don't know if most of you are aware of this, but the Board of Supervisors controls the budget for LA County. If I'm the sheriff and I spent all my time calling them names and degrading them, the likelihood of me being able to get the budget that I need to serve our residents of the county and our employees, it's not going to be there. So it's rhetoric, and I'm very troubled by the sheriff's rhetoric. And I'm going to keep on repeating this because I hear a lot of the comments that he makes. I think we all need to be very concerned that you have the sheriff of Los Angeles County consistently making false statements and really just making up information. This is a man that we need to trust when we have deputy involved shootings or natural disasters. We depend on him to come before you with facts, not things that he's making up, not rumors that he heard or falsehoods like he just stated earlier today.
Yes, audience question.
On that, kind of recognizing that the sheriff's department has to collaborate with other departments, and you've pointed to your record in Long Beach, I want to just give you a chance to respond to comments about the police not being allowed to do their jobs, as it were, during the 2020 unrest around police killings in Long Beach. Just want to note that that was brought up at this forum, and I wanted to give somebody from Long Beach with experience in Long Beach law enforcement to respond.
Yes, that again is false. And again, it's troubling that we have a person that we're supposed to trust passing on bad information. The rumor was that the mayor of Long Beach had directed me not to arrest looters or take action against people who were impacting our businesses on that day in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd. Like many cities in the United States, in the first hours, we struggled to gain control of some of our areas. I want to point out that we have a mutual aid system here in the county of Los Angeles, and we were immediately summoning mutual aid to get more help into Long Beach. But when we were calling the sheriff's department, they weren't sending us help. As a matter of fact, they ended up sending us a platoon from Ventura County sheriffs that we had to wait for before we got reinforcements. What I'm offended by is that I had men and women of the Long Beach Police Department working their butts off, putting their lives on the line to start turning the tide, which they did, because eventually we made over 100 arrests for looting and other civil unrest type offenses. And I had several officers injured while they were trying to do that. So again, that's information that is not accurate, and it's very troubling because that was a painful day for our city, and it impacts the heroic efforts of the men and women of the Long Beach Police Department. And I've got to say something, since this was brought up earlier. The job of the sheriff of LA County when there's civil unrest is to coordinate mutual aid for the entire county of Los Angeles and surrounding agencies, so every agency in the area has adequate resources. He failed at his job. That's why a lot of us cities, whether it was Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, and Long Beach, were very much struggling that day. And it took us extra hours to get back on track because the sheriff of LA County, Alex Villanueva, was not doing his job.
I think we have another audience question.
Hi, I have a question regarding homelessness and the metro system. As you know, safety on our transit systems is extremely important for all Los Angeles citizens and civilians, and this particularly impacts the Asian community, especially as women and elders are more prone to discrimination and racial tension. But Operation Safe Travel, as you know, is this enforcement-based approach to that the sheriff is piloting to increase more enforcement-based approaches to the metro system. To me, it worries me because I don't know that it's going to actually solve the problem of homelessness. It's just going to criminalize unhoused people and just shift the problem to another part of the city. And we already have this problem of just getting homeless people out of public space through 4118 at the city level. And so I wanted to hear your vision for what like a holistic approach towards resources to help unhoused people without criminalizing them. And I want to see how you're thinking about safety for all Angelinos, not just the people on the trains.
Number one, I'd like to start off by saying that I don't believe what we are doing right now is working. So I tell people the status quo is not working. We need to do some different things. When I was a police chief in Long Beach, we took a very different approach. Our health department in Long Beach actually took the lead on issues regarding the unhoused. And what we did is when we approached it, we as a city took an approach that it was service first and then still holding people accountable when you had to. But if you focus on getting housing, getting people mental health care, getting beds for the addicted, those things start turning the tide. And they did in Long Beach until COVID hit. When COVID hit, a lot of our community started suffering for a variety of reasons. We've got to go back and continue to work very hard to make sure that, one, the resources that are being applied through the federal and state government are being measured correctly, so we hold people accountable for the monies that are being used. And right now, the numbers are up in LA County. So my question is, are we holding others accountable? But you don't do it in a name-calling aspect. You have to do it in a way where it's holistic. So if all of us here in this room are in charge of reducing the population for the unhoused, so let's work on this as a team. It's like, you've got this aspect of it. Maybe you have the mental health aspect of it. You have the addiction aspect of it. You have the housing aspect of it. The sheriffs were at the table. How can we partner and be very good collaborators to each and every one of you? That is very critical. The other thing that I believe has to happen is, remember that the sheriff of LA County is the sheriff to the biggest sheriff's department in the country. So you have some pull. I would be spending time in Sacramento and in Washington, D.C. to be advocating for more funding for mental health beds and addiction beds and other services that may be needed. That is the key for us moving forward and progressing and finally doing what we should be doing for years now, trying to get people who need help off of our streets. And there is one other big aspect of it. As the sheriff of the jail system, biggest jail system in the area, what are we doing to contribute to the unhoused population before we're letting people go out? How about working with, again, partners to try and figure out how can we divert people before we let them back on the street so they don't go live in a tent on our sidewalks? This is such a complex problem, but I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get the job done and make sure we get people the help they need.
Great, thank you. Any last questions from the live audience before we move to the virtual? No, okay. Yeah, so one of the next questions that we do have here is, what is your stance on Measure A, and how do you keep the actions of the Sheriff's Department accountable?
My position on Measure A is that I believe the voters should select their sheriff. That system is in place. It has been in place, and the voters should retain the ability and the power to do that. But when you look at what the supervisors did, 4 or 5 of them decided to put this on the ballot, and there was a reason for it. Unfortunately, we have a rogue sheriff. There are weekly scandals. There are gangs in the sheriff's department. He is investigating his political enemies. He is having, once a month, there are employees, executives of his suing them for discrimination, for lying, for cover-ups. I mean, I could go on and on. We don't have enough time. So the supervisors in their leadership position are desperate and saying, what do we do to get this guy out of here? If it wasn't for the current sheriff, this measure would not be on the ballot, plain and simple. What I tell people is I represent the change. You put me in office, you don't even need this measure.
This is a question from the live stream. We have not had a chance to fact check this information, so I'll present it and then feel free if it's not accurate to refute it. The person for the live stream says the first Black female promotion to the rank of sergeant or above in the history of Long Beach Police Department happened only last month. Why did that take so long? And can you give examples of how you have fostered an environment of diversity within the Long Beach Police Department?
Absolutely. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the young lady who was promoted. I know her personally. She's an amazing person. So I want to congratulate her. The fact that we promoted the first Black female, not acceptable. I think we could have done a lot better of a job. But please remember this, that when you test, and every agency does it a little bit differently, the rank of sergeant and lieutenant, you test through the Civil Service Department, which is separate from the police department. You have to test, and if you score high enough, you get put on a list where then you're taken off the eligibility list to promote. That's the way the system works. But I want to address now my background with diversity. I became a police officer because of the injustices that I saw growing up as a kid, whether it was in East Los Angeles or Santa Fe Springs. So with that experience, I came to the floor, to the department with a different mentality. During my 7-year tenure as police chief, not one of my classes of police recruits had less than 50% people of color. That had never happened in the history of the department. And you got to remember, when I started there in 1986, I could count on 2 hands the number of minorities that worked at the Long Beach Police Department. So I'm talking about over time, things transitioning. When I first became chief, we did not have one Black commander or deputy chief. When I started, and after a little while, I promoted an individual, a Black individual, African-American, to I promoted him to commander and then to deputy chief. When I retired from the Long Beach Police Department at the end of last year, we have a total of 12 commanders. 3 of the 12 were Black. So you see how the information's kind of getting spun a little bit for whatever reason. But at the same time, I will always look at each and every one of you and say that diversity or reflecting the community we serve is very, very important. And by the way, my professional staff, which weren't sworn employees of the Long Beach Police Department, all but one were women, and all of them were women of color, including my CFO, who was of Filipino descent and one of the sharpest young ladies I've ever been around in my entire life. I actually would consistently tell her, someday I'm going to be working for you.
Great, thank you. So one of the questions that we had was submitted by an RSVP participant, and it says, in 2016, an LA Superior Court judge deemed Long Beach policing policies of entrapping gay men for lewd conduct as discriminatory. And in a 2018 assessment of the Long Beach Police Department by consultants found that the department had 0 policies addressing police interactions with LGBTQ plus individuals. How will you ensure that LGBTQ plus individuals, including queer and trans Asians, are protected and treated with dignity, compassion, and respect?
You cannot be a police chief in the city of Long Beach with our large LGBTQ community and not have a very positive working relationship. We have one of the largest LGBTQ communities anywhere in the United States. My mayor, Robert Garcia, who I work hand in hand with, was a gay man who him and I, again, worked very, very well together. We had an incident in Long Beach where there was complaints of sexual activity in a bathroom, and our vice unit went to go follow the process that they normally follow. And in that, we arrested an individual who was gay. And the judge, when he came back with his decision, he was very critical of our policies. But what I want to make clear to everyone in the audience and everyone looking on TV is you got to go back and study what happened after that incident. Instead of having a police executive who try to hide from the truth or blame other people for the issues, I stood up and said, you know what we did, we have to change. We have to change our policy. So what we had done is we were proactive and we reached out to our LGBTQ center, and we already had a very good working relationship with them. And we started to work through some of the challenges that you were talking about. And then we were able to modify our policy and come out ahead. And see, here is something for all of you that I want you to walk away from. In policing, whether it's the Long Beach Police Department, the Los Angeles Police Department, or the Sheriff's Department, it is such an intense environment, and you're dealing with so many issues. And what we need, you need a law enforcement leader who has dealt with adversity and was honest about it and said, you know what, we may have made a mistake here. There's a different way of handling this. And then we work with our community, whether it is our API community, our Black community, our LGBTQ communities. How do we get to a place that we can work together and move forward? And you'll see that every time anything happened like that with me involved, that was my collaborative nature. Whether it is with our elected officials, with our community members, whatever it takes to then build public trust. Because if you don't have trust, you don't have safety. And you need a leader who can accept responsibility, take accountability for his actions and the actions of his men and women, and then move forward in a collaborative effort.
Chief Luna, this will be the final question, another submitted question here. And I think this final question is appropriate given that we're here in Koreatown. We all know the outsized effect on Asian communities, especially the Korean American community, during the 1992 LA uprising, known in the Korean community as Saigu. If you were sheriff at that time, how would you have responded the same or differently?
We're talking about after the
92 LA uprising.
Yes, there were a lot of deaths, injuries, and businesses that were looted and burned, which is not acceptable. For me, being as prepared as you can up front to make sure that not only on the police side that we're working together, that we're getting the best information, intelligence that we could to make sure that we have the appropriate resources in place, and then communicating with our community, both from, is there a way to prevent a lot of what happened? Is there a way to intercede and let people blow off steam, especially if it has to do with the police? Because let's be honest, the history between the police and a lot of our communities of color is not a good one. So how do we intercede so we make things better? And again, try to prevent that from happening. And as it's happening, respond the best that we can with as many resources as we possibly can. But then there's also something else, is that when you start seeing groups gather who are angry, what about sending people out, whether it is our faith-based leaders or other community people that individuals that community members really trust, and try and talk some things out? What can we do? How can we channel this energy? Anything that we can do to prevent the violence, to prevent property damage, whatever it takes, because at the end of the day, we're in this together. We either fall apart together or we move forward together. As your sheriff, I'm going to be working with you to make sure that we do everything we can to prevent, because we had the Watts riots, we had the Rodney King uprising, we had the death or the murder of George Floyd. What about the next one? Are we ready? We need to start working on that yesterday, not wait until it starts happening. But that's where you need a sheriff and a sheriff's department that can be trusted and is a partner with each and every one of you so that we prevent something like that from happening again.
Chief Luna, we really appreciate you answering all these questions. I know we need to wrap up here, but we wanted to give you an opportunity, a couple minutes for a closing statement, if you'd like, closing remarks.
Thank you. Again, I appreciate all the effort. Putting something like this together takes a lot of work. I'm running, like I said earlier, to be your sheriff. We need change, and I represent that change. If you're tired of all the dysfunction, all the chaos, all the scandals that are happening, like I said earlier, on a weekly basis, we need to stop having an us versus them mentality, this combative mentality, and we need to start leading by example. We have an opportunity to turn this sheriff's department around to be the best sheriff's department like it once was again, to be something that we're all proud of, whether it's what we do on the streets, what we do in our custody facilities and our court facilities. And what I'm doing is I'm building a coalition, not only to be elected, but a coalition that when I walk into the sheriff's department on day one, that we are changing because all of you are demanding that transformation and change. That it's not just Robert Luna who wants to do it or myself, it's all of you. And that's how we're going to create the change we need. So it becomes your sheriff's department again. Right now, it's one person's sheriff's department, not all of ours. And we need to change that. So thank you very much for your time.
Great, thank you. All right, so that's the closing of our program. Thank you again for everybody's participation. So I wanted to take a moment to again remind folks the importance to get out to vote. Elections are coming, but not only is it important that we show up to the ballots or that we mail in our ballots, but it's also important to encourage our titas, our aunties, our uncles, our grandparents to get out to vote. But that always brings a challenge for the Asian American community, which is language access. And so one of the things that we want to encourage you all to do is that after today's event, we're going to be sharing a lot of information about what are the rights of our elders, our limited English proficient voters, and community members when it comes to making sure that their vote gets heard, their vote gets casted, and that their voice matters. And so please let us know if there's any way that we can support moving forward. But at the end of the day, thank you so much. And I hope to see all of you all in the future when it comes to us having conversations about the future of the Asian American community here in Los Angeles.
And thank you very much to both Sheriff Villanueva and Chief Luna for joining. We appreciate it. Hope you all have a great night.